Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Bermuda Championship Data Dive Show. Per usual on a Monday night, we're going to take a look at the forecast. It is quite a wild one for Port Royal and the Bermuda Championship. We're going to take a look at some deep statistical dives into the metrics that generally play well around Port Royal. We're going to figure out in Fantasy National the players who have played the best at those particular metrics. And then, of course, towards the end of the show, I will delve into any research that I find useful for this week. I will be very, very upfront in that the Bermuda Championship is quite inconsistent in terms of its winners. But we'll still get into that at the end of the show. So without any further ado, I know I'm a little bit delayed, but we are here nonetheless. Without any further delay, let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research every Monday regarding some course information, patterns of previous winners, players in the field who fit those patterns this week. Didn't do anything for the Bermuda Championship, like I mentioned. The winners here have been pretty inconsistent in terms of patterns. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. Definitely made some wagers on players at numbers that I liked when the odds came out earlier today. So if you want to see the players I'm wagering my own money on, and the players that I'm using most often in my lineups for DFS, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. By subscribing to his article, you're going to get his deluxe version, which comes out early on Wednesday, which includes his projected ownerships, his favorite values, top plays, all of that. You really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to his article. And go show him some support. Follow him over on social media, because that is where we will continue the picks challenge for 2026 over on his social media page. So make sure you're following him over there as well. And then lastly, for this intro, we're live. Chat's open. I see a couple of you in there already. I'll get to you as soon as the intro is over. But would love to hear from you all. What do you think of the forecast for this week? Who do you think your favorite is, considering we don't really have any big names this week in Bermuda? One would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Put those into chat. If you aren't able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2025 Bermuda Championship. And as always, on a Monday evening, we're going to take what I would normally say our first look at the forecast. We did take a quick gander at this last night. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciate. How are you this evening? You got your lineups ready. 50% Pearson Cootie. Okay. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really dug too much into it. I made 3 wagers today. Sorry, let me center this camera. I made 3 wagers today, and 2 of them over triple digits. 101, 100-1 plus on 2 players that I kind of have keyed in on early this week. Another one that I think was 40 or 45-1. I did not bet Pearson Cootie, but we'll be interested to see how he fares, or how he looks with some of the metrics this week, considering he's been playing some very, very solid golf. But it's good to see you this evening. Thanks again, as always, for jumping into chat. It is very much appreciated. As we looked last night at our at a quick preview, nothing really has changed for the Bermuda Championship. Tomorrow, supposedly they are going to get dumped on in terms of rain. Half an inch of rain at 2 p.m., rain throughout the day, monsoon-like conditions almost seemingly tomorrow. So we'll have to keep in touch and figure out if that is indeed the case tomorrow. And then we look at tournament time, Thursday through Sunday. players are going to be dealing with wind throughout the tournament. You see sustained winds into the 20s for the majority of Thursday. Does look like Friday could die down a little bit. So, again, we will update this early or at the beginning of the show Wednesday night. But if this forecast were to hold, it does look like Friday PM would have the advantage in this regard, considering the wind does look like it's going to die down, but it's still way too early to be considering wave advantages. We're going to want the most up to the second forecast by the time we put our lineups together. It's not a bad idea to have an idea on some of the players that you might want to use, a la as Phil has done early this week. When the tee times come out, Phil, you might be interested to see how many of your players actually have the Thursday AM, Friday PM draw, as that appears at least early on this week to have the advantage. But we're still so far out that I'm not going to set that in stone by any means. Birdie Fest then or harder. Lots of rain makes it softer. Yes, lots of rain does make it softer. Sorry, let me make sure I remove any distraction there from myself. And I need to fix... Nope, that's the wrong way. Fix my green screen. Apologies for that. Ignoring weather being insane scientist play. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's insane. I don't know if it's the scientist play to do that. Just because wind's going to be a factor no matter what. So you are definitely taking a risk by doing that. It could very well pan out for you. I don't want to talk you off of that if that is the way you want to go about it. But I mean, you see here, all of Thursday seems like it's going to be very difficult in terms of wind. Saturday, sustained winds into the 30s. And then most of Sunday looks like they're going to be dealing with a lot of wind as well. So I am going to be factoring in a lot of wind conditions in general this week, whether that is actually in the mixed condition model or making sure my players are at least acceptable in the wind. I'm going to put it, I'm going to be factoring in a decent amount this week. As for your other question, Birdie Fest or harder, I'm going to think this is harder simply because of all of this wind. In the instance, I'll skip ahead or cheat a little bit. In the instance where if the wind does die down, you would be looking at a very easy course. It is soft, or it is short. It is very wide open. There's not a lot of tree trouble here. That is why the wind affects this course so much. But considering the forecast that we have, Phil, early on in the week, and this could obviously change, but you see, when it gets windy, it is difficult here. It can play pretty darn difficult. So I do not envision the 20 whatever unders that we've had in years past. 19 under last year from Rafael Campos. I believe 19 under from Seamus Power. 15 under. I'm looking at more of a 15 under type tournament this week, like Lucas Herbert. Because, again, vividly, I just remember that Sunday round that Lucas Herbert shoots a very respectable 2 under in horrendous conditions. And that is what I'm seeing in terms of a forecast so far this week. So obviously we'll update this come at the beginning of the Wednesday night, the beginning of the show. If you are not able to get another forecast, I would encourage you to tune in Wednesday night for nothing else other than the forecast to see if it changes. It does appear, if this forecast holds, we could be looking at a Friday PM favor. So take that for what you will this early in the week. All right, we'll close out Wind Finder And we'll move to Fantasy National. No more field changes so far. The only field change has been William Mao. William Mao has withdrawn, decided not to play this week. And any other player other than William Mao is an alternate. Chesson Hadley, Scott Piercy, Duffner, etc., etc. Or excuse me, not Duffner. Yeah, Duffner. He's an alternate. Any player starred other than William Mao is an alternate at the moment. William Mao has fully withdrawn. Quick look at a couple of things here very quickly. Based on that forecast, we're going to look at moderate and windy conditions. I don't see any way that I don't factor in some kind of wind performance into my evaluations this week. It might not make my mixed condition model, but I am going to make sure my players are adept at playing in the wind. You see moderate and windy conditions. Alex Smalley's pretty darn good in moderate. In fact, you could argue to look at just windy conditions, because that forecast was horrendous. So I'm going to back this all the way out to 2022, maybe? Does that give us enough rounds? Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it does. So understand I'm going back a few years just to make it statistically significant for these players. That way they at least have close to 20 rounds. In windy conditions, your top performers in the field this week at the Bermuda Championship, Matt Kuchar, who has been pretty darn solid here at Bermuda, I believe. I lied to you. Apparently he has not played. I thought he had. He has played well in very, very comparable courses. Sony, Pebble Beach, things of that nature. I, honest to goodness, thought he had played Bermuda. He has not. He is your top performer wind, factoring just windy conditions. Patrick Fishburne, Adam Hadwin, Sam Stevens, Rico Hoey, Paul Peterson, Mark Hubbard, Ben Martin, Matt Wallace, and Danny Walker are your top 10 in terms of performance in windy conditions, going back a few years now. Danny Walker, I'm imagining this is mostly the Players, where he played very well on the weekend in 2025. Did not play as well at the Sony in windy conditions, but finishing, what was it, third? T6 at the Players. Really a strong performance for Danny Walker this year at the Players. I remember that. So there's your top performers when factoring in windy conditions. If we take a look at difficult, that is the lean that I'm going to have so far this week based on that forecast. If it does not play difficult, I will be pretty susceptible and pretty weak. I don't think it'll be easy. Again, if we look at the historic conditions, anytime it's been windy, like we've seen in the forecast, it's been average at best, mostly difficult. Difficult there, difficult there, difficult. Average in 2021, average in 2020. So I am quite hesitant to call this easy based on that forecast. So when rounds have been difficult relative to par the past couple of years, your top performers in the field this week: Victor Paris, Kevin Streelman, Chandler Phillips, Matt Wallace, your boy there, Phil, early on this week, Pearson Cootie, top 5 when rounds have been difficult. Sam Stevens, Max McGreevy, Mark Hubbard, Taylor Montgomery, and Jeremy Paul are your top 10. Just out of interest, taking a look at Pearson Cootie, has played very well when it's difficult. That is a positive sign. He has not performed well in moderate wind, but he's been very good when it's windy. So at least, a 30,000 foot view, big picture view here of Pearson Cootie. I don't hate your thought process there, Phil. I really don't. In seeming like you have 50% on Pearson Coody in whatever lineups, however many lineups that you're playing. I will put a little bit of a damp on that in the sense that a lot of his gain, a lot of his strength is in off the tee, and that is very, very mitigated here. Very mitigated here. Now, he's been, decent with the irons. He's been pretty solid around the green. The putter has been hit and miss. I do worry that this might not be the best fit for him, considering he is mostly an off-the-tee player. Having said that, he did finish top 15 here last year. So it's absolutely not nothing. So I don't hate that to start the week in terms of your thoughts there, Phil. The only other big picture or big view filter that we're going to take a look at, short course. This is a very short course, one of the shortest courses on the PGA Tour, measuring just over 6,800 yards. So in the past couple of years, your top performers on short courses in the field this week: Mark Hubbard, Patrick Fishburne, Eric Cole, Ryo Hitsatsune, Bo Hostler, Chandler Phillips, Victor Perry, Jonathan Bird, Lonto Griffin, Matt Kuchar, and Patrick Rogers are your top 10 in terms of performance, top 11 technically, performance on short courses. Okay, with that, we're going to go to Microsoft Excel for a moment, and much like we did last week, we don't have strokes gain data for Port Royal, much like we didn't have strokes gain for El Cardinal. But we will go through and see which statistics that we can gather, which have played well around Port Royal, and see if we can narrow in on what types of players we want to focus on. Again, my assumption is that off the tee is not going to be a big deal at all. I understand that this distance metric seems pretty strong. I am going to take some liberty here. I am imagining the distance is this high because of the players that are hitting 3-wood versus irons off tees. It is very rare that players will get aggressive and hit driver on a lot of these holes. So I am not of the belief that distance really matters. You see, fairways don't really matter all that much. The fairways are pretty darn difficult to hit as it is. When you factor in the wind, it is very difficult to hit these fairways. The rough is not penal at all. It's only kept 2 inches long. Not difficult to play out of at all. There is quite a bit of rough on this course. There's very, very few trees, so wayward tee balls aren't punished all that much. So I just don't see much to gain in off the tee this week. And you see, really around the rest of this, there's not a whole lot to gain. Good drives, right at full field course average. Greens, a little bit less. These greens are massive, but they're somewhat hard to hit because of the wind. I'm not a big proponent of looking at much in this page view. If I do, it would be good drives, I guess. But I don't see a whole lot here. I do think iron play is going to be pretty important. I am going to have a decent bit of around the green play because greens aren't all that easy to hit here. With all the wind, players are going to just flat out miss greens. It's going to happen with the amount of wind that's in the forecast. So I do think around the green is going to play a factor. Lucas Herbert, Seamus Power, these guys are generally pretty good around the green. Campos, maybe not so much. 2 years, like Brendan Todd, Brian Gay, These guys are good iron players, pretty tidy around the green, and they're great putters. So I do think we're going to need to factor in quite a bit of putting this week. And that's why there isn't a whole lot of consistency to this tournament. Because a lot of times it doesn't necessarily turn into a putting contest, but putting does become a pretty important factor considering how short the course is. Players are not gaining a whole lot off the tee. So we'll be focused on these 3 shot types this week. Again, maybe look at some good drives gained. Sand saves, this is a pretty big number. I don't know if I want to factor in sand saves. Maybe a little bit. Maybe we might take a look at it, 5% or so. Moving to scoring, this shows you the Jekyll and Hyde nature of this course. Despite it being short, despite it being pretty easy in calm conditions, it's actually the bogey avoidance that is narrowly, and I mean narrowly, more important than the average full field course. If we take a look across here, the higher raw number is always going to be in the birdies gained. But it's been fairly consistent the past 3 years in terms of how much the bogey avoidance matters. And with that forecast, I could envision myself looking at bogey avoidance this week, thinking that scores are going to be closer to the 15 under instead of the 20 under. The Eagles looked like a fairly decent size number. That is based on this one big outlier from last year. You remove that, it completely flips, becomes 12% less important. So that's just one big outlier there. I don't know how I feel about double bogey avoidance. So we'll look at both tonight, but I'm leaning more bogey avoidance. Moving into the par 3s. And par 3s, par 4s, par 5s, the real meat and potatoes of breaking down a golf course, see where players have been making the most or taking advantage of the course the most. The short par 3 has been very consistent, but as you see, it doesn't really contribute a whole lot. 0.3 out of 1.6. That's 22% or so. Not a whole lot here. It's just been very consistent. Really, you're kind of looking at the 225 plus, but that's still based on 2 pretty high outliers. I'm still thinking we're just going to look at these 2 ranges, because this range has been very consistent, although it's just one hole on the scorecard. Because you have 2 from 235, 1 at 215, and then a 148. So I think we'll look at both of these. Yes, statistically it says the 225 plus, but I'm still thinking we look at the 2 long par 3s. But those par 3s do matter. They matter quite a bit. 11% more important than the average full field course. Just like at El Cardinal Diamante. I know this is a little bit negative, but we focused a lot of our attention in those links of proximities, and par 3s mattered. Par 3s mattered last week. So we're going to have some emphasis in these par 3s, probably the long par 3s. Moving to par 4s, no surprise. Look at where all the strokes gained come. 350 to 4, 400 to 450. A whole lot in these 2 buckets. An astronomical number here, because not every course has a 350 to 400 par 4. This one has 6 of them. Just a huge, huge factor. So we're going to have quite a bit of weight in terms of 350 to 4. But we're not going to ignore the 400 to 450 either. You see, they've been pretty equal year over year here at Port Royal in terms of importance. So we'll definitely look at both of those. And then the par 5s, pretty simple. 2 of the 3 fall to this range. Only 1 to this range. We'll look at 500 to 550. And it bears out right there as well. Again, no shot link data, so we don't have anything for proximities. My guess, we're going to look at these 3 ranges here. 75 to 150. just based on the bevy. I mean, the just huge amount of short par fours that are prevalent on this course. We're probably going to take a look at anywhere from 75 to 150 in those 3 proximity buckets. So again, not as much detail as I would like to go into normally on a course without shot link. It's a little difficult to do. But there is a look at what statistics we can dive into and how I see them playing or not playing much of a factor at Port Royal. So we'll go back to Fantasy National and the players in the field this week. We'll go to last 36 rounds. We're not going to ignore approach by any means. Your top approach players in the field this week at the Bermuda: Ben Coles, Rico Hoey, Victor Perry, Doug Gim, David Skins, Rosen Miller, Grayson Sigg, Luke Clanton, Mateo Montecero, and Antoine Rosner. Kuchar falling just outside the top 10 there, only because you've mentioned him. Where is Cootie? Don't see him yet. His irons have been kind of hit and miss. He's 79th, not great by any means, but not atrocious. Not going to ignore around the green. I am going to have a decent weight in around the green this week. Your top around the green players in the field this week at the Bermuda: Mateo Montecero, Matt Wallace, Andrew Putnam, Taylor Montgomery, Chandler Phillips, Takumi Kanaya, Adams Vinson, Paul Peterson, Jonathan Bird, Bo Hostler. James Hahn, we skipped James Hahn. He is an alternate at the moment. And then lastly, we'll take a look at a couple of different things here. Make sure I include the years, because we'll take a look at specifically TIFF Eagle Bermuda. This is TIFF Eagle Bermuda. TIFF Eagle Bermuda is seen quite a bit on the PGA Tour. Bay Hill, host of the Arnold Palmer. We include PGA National, host of what used to be the Honda Classic, now is the Cognizant. The Plantation Course in Kapalua has TIFF Eagle Bermuda. Port Royal, and where we'll be next week at Sea Island, Seaside Course. Those courses, at least per the GCSAA, have TIFF Eagle Bermuda. Now, the interesting thing is Bay Hill and PGA National, Bay Hill especially, are lightning fast. PGA National is generally pretty fast. Plantation Course is notoriously slow. These are notoriously slow. Sea Island, kind of hit and miss, depends on the weather. They've been slow. They've also been fast when the weather's been calm, so kind of hit and miss there. But in the past 4 or so years, your top putters specifically on TIFF Eagle Bermuda: Taylor Montgomery, Bo Hostler, Sam Ryder, Jesper Svensson, Nico Echeverria, Eric Cole, Chan Kim, David Skins, Vincent Whaley, Tyler Duncan, and Taylor Moore. If we zoom out a little bit and just take a look at Velcro Bermuda, because these will be slow. There's only 1 year that it was average. Otherwise, they have been slow, and they try to keep them slow because of all the wind in the forecast. Your top putters, oh my gosh, there is not a lot of rounds here. We'll keep going back. Yeah, I'm only going to go back to 2022 just to keep it consistent with the TIFF Eagle Bermuda, with the windy. So not a whole lot of rounds here. Just understand that. Not a whole lot of rounds. But on Velcro Bermuda, on the extremely slow Bermuda greens, which is basically Kapalua, you see Bermuda, and very rarely you'll get some Valero Texas Open, but rarely. So your top putters on Velcro Speed Bermuda greens: Camilo Villegas, former winner here, Adam Hadwin, Eric Cole, Taylor Moore, Nico Echeverria, Sahith Theegala, Luke List, and then you see the rest of these tied for 8th is a 0, even though they've put 16 rounds on them. It's because it's all at the Bermuda and we don't get strokes gained data. So Villegas has essentially put the Century well in 2 rounds. Hadwin has put the Century well in 2 rounds. Again, an extremely small sample size. Velcro Bermuda. Otherwise, the players who have not put the Century very well: Lee Hodges, Matt Wallace, Seamus Power did not putt well at the Century, but he is a former champion at the Bermuda, so I'd take that with a little bit of grain of salt. Svensson, Andrew Putnam, Patrick Rogers. So not a whole lot to gain there. Not a whole lot to gain there. Yep, I believe that's kind of it for the strokes gained. We'll move to driving and greens, and like I said, there's not a whole lot in here that I am really drawn to. We will use the moderate and windy condition filter. Yeah, that should be enough rounds. I'll look at good drives gained. That's kind of my lean if I do anything in this page view, but there's not a whole lot I like here. This calendar year in 2025, your top good drives gained players in moderate and windy conditions have been Carson Young, Max McGreevy, Andrew Putnam, Rio Hitsatsune, Taylor Moore, Henrik Norlander, Thorbjorn Olesen, Victor Perry, Ricky Castillo, and Zach Blair. Your top 10 there. Yeah, there's not a whole lot I like in this in this page view. Maybe I'll warm up to something eventually, but I just don't see it. We'll move to scoring. Again, I'm going to default to the difficult relative to par filter, just because of that forecast. I don't see it playing easy. It could very well play average. If it does, I'll be a little bit weak or suspect to that. That's fine. I'm going to be cautious and think it's going to play difficult because of all the wind. Your top bogey avoiders when rounds have been difficult in the past couple of years: Seamus Power, Sam Stevens, Trey Mullinex, Patrick Rogers, Nick Hardy, Matt Kuchar, Vince Whaley, Mark Hubbard, Taylor Montgomery, and Victor Perry. Again, skipping Martin Laird, he is an alternate. That is where my lean is. I could be talked into looking at birdies are better when things are difficult. Guys are still going to have to score to win here. You saw 15 under from Lucas Herbert in the worst of conditions. So there are still scores to be had if a player's playing well. Your top birdies are better gained players when rounds are difficult in the field this week: Chandler Phillips, Pearson Coody, Luke Clanton, Max McGreevy, Matty Schmid, Thorbjorn Olesen, Mark Hubbard, Antoine Rosner, Frankie Sapan. Phil, your guy, Frankie Sapan, although he did not play well last week at the Worldwide Technologies at all. And Lonto Griffin are your top 10 in birdies are better when rounds have been difficult relative to par. Okay, we'll move to proximity. Again, I'm going to sort on total procs, but we are mostly focused on the short ranges. So even though Ricky Castillo is first in terms of total procs, look at his short ranges, his wedges. Not very good. 112th, 76, 96, not very good. So we start coming down this list looking at players who have been, good to exceptional in all three. Ben Coles kind of stands out here. Kuchar in the very, very short ranges. Paul Peterson in the short ranges. Maybe Doug Gim to a lesser extent. Lee Hodges from 100 to 150. Not very good from 75 to 100, but 100 to 150 he's been very good. Alex Smalley's been good at all three. Camilo Villegas, 3rd and 12th. 52nd and the other is not great, but certainly someone to take a look at. Grayson Sigg, 6th, 1st, 25th. Very, very solid. Very solid in all three. Seamus Power, 1st, 2nd, 26th. Very solid. Kevin Streelman, 21st, 5th, 27th. Solid. Extremely solid. Coming down just a little bit more. Vince Cavello, maybe a little bit. Duffner is an alternate. Justin Lauer, who's played very well at this course. The strokes gained total leader the last 5 years here. See, he's been very good at the shortest proximities. Probably some correlation there. Fratelli's an alternate. So yeah, there's a few players who kind of stick out for better or worse in these short wedge proximities. Moving to par threes. And again, we'll sort on total par threes, where we're looking at these two long ranges of par threes, the 200 to 225 and 225 plus. Chan Kim, pretty decent, 22nd, 19th. Takumi Kanaya. Taylor Montgomery, been very good at the long par threes. Paul Peterson's been fine. Gordon Sargent has been pretty good at the long par threes. Sammy Valimaki, another reason why I was very high on Sammy last week. Generally plays par threes well. I don't think this is the greatest fit for Sammy this week, but par threes, he's been pretty solid. Lee Hodges. Anytime you factor in long par threes, Lee Hodges is somebody to heavily consider. Excuse me. Mark Hubbard maybe a bit to a lesser extent. Victor Perry a little bit. So there's a few of the players on the long par threes. Conversely, on the short par fours that are prevalent here, we're looking at these two ranges, 350 to 450. Noah Goodwin, 1st and 4th. Kevin Roy, Matt Wallace. Matt Kuchar, probably an honorable mention. Top 25 of both, but nothing inside the top 20. Sam Ryder, excellent. Taylor Montgomery, 8th in both. Quade Cummins, 8th and 10th. Trey Mullinax, decent. Good and very good. Norlander, probably an honorable mention. Celinda, maybe an honorable mention. Jesper Svensson, an honorable mention, taking advantage of these shorter par fours. So there's a list of that. And then lastly, the 500 to 550 par fives. Ben Martin, Alex Smalley, Suber, Lee Hodges again, Chan Kim, Taylor Moore, Bramlett, Hostler, Castillo, Austin Cook. Okay. We'll move back to Microsoft Excel and the early look file for the week. This is performance at the Bermuda Championship at Port Royal the last 5 years. So you see someone like Ryan Palmer has only played it once. He did finish 8th. Pearson Coody only played it once. He did finish 12th last year. Anybody highlighted orange is an alternate. Just keep that in mind. Again, no strokes gained here for the Bermuda. So really, only Pearson Coody is extremely positive in terms of distance for these players who have played it well, at the very best. Having said that, take a look at some of the players who have played it consistently well. Justin Lauer, strokes gained total leader. Very, very negative in terms of distance. Not a big distance per player. Sig, 3 for 3, average finish inside the top 15. Less in distance. Power and Rogers have been positive in distance. My guess is they've been hitting 3-woods instead of irons off tees. Smalley's generally going to have a little bit more distance. Hubbard, not a lot of distance. Camilo Villegas, former winner, not a lot of distance. So a little bit of a mixed bag here. And again, I think that's because this is the difference between players hitting 3-woods and players hitting irons off tees versus somebody who like Cootie who is actually hitting driver. So be interested to see how things shape up this week with the amount of wind in the forecast. Let's take a look at, say, birdies and bogeys. We'll sort on birdies gained to start. Your top birdies gained players. Again, ADDC, it's just one time. There's Alex Smalley, Sam Ryder, Justin Lauer, Patrick Rogers. These guys who have played very well here. They're still gaining birdies, but they're also avoiding their bogeys. There's just more to be gained, I think, in the birdies. Let's see. 4.3 is really not all that much. 3.3, 3.0. Having said that, it does look like 3.2, 3.1 is the highest in bogey avoidance. So, I don't know. Again, pretty even. Pretty even if you ask me. There's your top birdies gained players at the Bermuda Championship the last 5 years. We'll also take a look at bogey avoidance. Absolutely. 4.3 was the highest, but it quickly got into the 2s. For bogey avoidance, kind of the same. Justin Lauer leading the way of the players who have played it consistently. 3.1, 2.8, 2.4, 2.3. So fairly similar. The higher numbers are generally in the birdies gained. Definitely want to look and see who has played these long par 3s the best. We'll just sort on the 225 plus to save some time. Players who have played the 225 plus par 3s the best. Campos played them played them very, very well. Max McGreevy, Vincent Whaley, Lipsky, Ben Martin. Martin Laird is an alternate. I apologize. I need to highlight him. Nico, Dylan Wu. Dylan Wu, I thought, is an alternate. Yeah, so there's a look at your top long par 3 performers. We'll go 350 to 4, and we'll probably end there and then go into the research. Your top short par 4 performers at the Bermuda. Ryan Palmer, it's only one time. Sam Ryder, Ben Coles, Alex Smalley, Putnam Shank, Seamus Power, former winner. Hubbard's been pretty good here. Rogers has been pretty good here. Lauer's been very good here. Kevin Yu, okay. Aldo Griffin, Matty Schmidt, Nico. So, the data doesn't seem very consistent, and that's a pretty common theme with the Bermuda Championship, as I will show you here momentarily. The reason why I didn't post anything to social media. Let's take a look at, first, we'll take a look at the winner matrix. And this is about the only thing that has been consistent among winners the past few years. I want you to take a look at their performance before winning at the Bermuda. Brendan Todd, winner of the inaugural. Obviously, no one had seen the course before. Brian Gay finished third and then first, and he's also played well afterwards. So Brian Gay just loves this course. It's built for Brian Gay. Lucas Herbert had never played it before winning. Then look at Seamus Power. Seamus Power had a top 15, a couple other middling finishes, but he had been fairly solid here. He hadn't missed a cut, is what I'm getting at. Camilo Villegas had never missed a cut before winning at the Bermuda. Rafael Campos kind of broke that trend last year. Didn't play it for 3 years, missed the cut in 2020, finished top 20 in the inaugural Bermuda Championship. So if you take out Campos, basically all of these players had continuous success at the Bermuda Championship of those who had played. I mean, even Campos had a top 20. But make sure the guys that you are you are focusing on this week, early on at least, they have played the Bermuda, or if they have played the Bermuda, they've at least played it well. They're not continuously missing cuts. They're not 1 for 4 in making cuts or 0 for 3 or whatever. They're playing that course very well. Make sure of that. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot of consistency here. Take a look at their previous performance. Rafael Campos misses the cut in Mexico and then comes and wins in Bermuda. Camilo Villegas finished second in Mexico and then comes and wins in Bermuda. The rest of these players were not in good form at all. At all. Top 50 at the CJ Cup, miscut. You look at Campos, had a top 15 in the fall, but otherwise had missed 4 straight cuts. Like, their irons weren't even in good form in their previous tournament. Distance wasn't a factor. Really, it was putting, but Campos kind of broke that last year. Granted, we don't get putting statistics from Cabo, but I can't imagine he putt very well if he missed the cut. And he wasn't in good putting form regardless. Like, this is just erratic. As a statistician, I hate this. This is erratic. There's no consistency among anything here. Sure, Villegas finished runner-up in Cabo and then comes and wins, but, he had played very poorly at the Sanderson Farms. You look at Seamus Power. Power had no form coming in. His irons were atrocious. All of these players' irons were atrocious coming into the Bermuda, and then they win. So that's why I'm thinking it is much more of a short game type course. Wedges, 75 to 150, which technically is still an approach shot, so we can't ignore strokes gained approach. But it's much more short game and putting. And that's why there's not a whole lot of consistency year over year here. Like, even if we look at the par 3s and 4s and 5s, the only consistency is this, and there's only one par 5 that measures to that length. So there's just not a whole lot here to go on. And if we take a look at their form throughout the entirety of the year, like Campos, sorry for jumping around a little bit, but I'm gathering what they had done in the fall with these, kind of abbreviated performance charts here. But even if we look at their entire year's performance, like Campos sandwiches a top 15 in between 4 and what is this? He sandwiches a top 15 inside 12 missed cuts and then wins. Like, no form at all, and then comes and wins Bermuda. Villegas had his 2-week wonder. He finishes second at Cabo, first in Bermuda, and he has not been good since his win at Bermuda. Power, he played well at the U.S. Open, played well at the PGA, but even in terms of like the playoffs and fall performance, like his irons were garbage. But he was very good short game and good putting. Lucas Herbert, his irons were garbage in the fall, but he had been good in short game and putting. So, not a whole lot of consistency there. So that's what I have for you all in terms of a Data Dive show. Again, I've made a few wagers. I'm probably going to make a couple more after looking at a couple things tonight. But thanks to Phil for jumping in the chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Certainly did that last week for myself. Worldwide Technologies was one of the best weeks I've ever had, including my personal record, finishing second in a big GPP. Still haven't gotten that elusive DFS takedown, but last week certainly gives me a lot of confidence moving forward for the rest of 2025, considering there's only 2 weeks left. So thanks again for all the support. for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Bermuda Championship, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Bermuda Championship, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.